Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying Grow so far. My name's Mark Debenham, and welcome to my session, The Story That Sticks, Building Trust in Your Marketing Data with AI. I am the Vice President of Growth Marketing and Marketing Operations for a company called Adverity. Adverity is a marketing data and intelligence platform that helps you connect your data, harmonize it, and then activate it to generate intelligent insights from your data that help make an impact for your business. So if you're collecting data at scale, then you're going to want to use Adverity. But I'm not going to be talking to you today about Adverity or any kind of particular tools. What I'm going to be talking to you today instead about is something that's far more universal: how to tell stories with your data. Not just any stories, but stories that we can trust. I think in the age that we're living in at the moment with artificial intelligence, it's a really exciting time, but it really amplifies everything. And it's very easy to get lost in the data and go into some very, I'd say, incorrect directions. So as I said, I work in growth marketing and marketing operations. So I'm really into the qualitative and the quantitative side of the data. I get lost in it. I waffle, and a lot of the time I start a sentence and I really don't know how I'm going to finish it, including right now. So, for example, I will not hesitate spending 6 or 7 hours watching YouTube videos of robot vacuums before deciding which one to buy, and I will also see whole afternoons gone just researching what toothpaste to buy. Sorry, not what toothpaste to buy, what toothbrush to buy. So, as you're probably wondering, in the end I went with the Roborock S7 Max Ultra, and I went with the Oral-B IO7. So when you add AI into the mix, and if you're close to the data, then you can really go into certain directions that are really helpful or really unhelpful. So I think often what's needed is a framework, a way to ground your story, ground your prompts, to keep you on track, and to make sure that you're actually telling responsible stories with your data, and stories that will actually stick rather than drifting in meaning. I think the reality of marketing operations is that you tend to work closely with the data, and not just marketing operations, I'd say sales operations too, or any team when you're close to the data. I think it's a case of you're often backstage, you're not in the spotlight, you're the one that's making sure that it all works. And I think often when you give that data to other teams, you're elsewhere when the story and the strategy is being told. And I think this image actually sums up quite well. Others are singing the tune that your data is helping them play. And yes, you can probably imagine this image is AI generated. I spoke about it with how I felt working in marketing operations, and this was the image that came out from it at the end of it. So I think the problem is that you need to be able to explain what the data is saying. I need to be able to explain to my girlfriend why the toothbrush that I bought for her has Bluetooth on it, and why it gives her an appraisal on how she's brushed each quadrant of her mouth every morning and every evening. And I also need to explain to my cats why half their floor space is taken up by this massive robot hoover, this massive robot vacuum that now makes sounds because it empties itself, dries its own mops, refills its tank as well. So I need to be able to carry that data and all that research into the story and the insight for them. So I guess what I'm saying is when you're very close to the data, it's very easy for the meaning to drift and the story to get lost and just not stick at all. I think you can fall into the trap of being felt like you're just told to do the thing rather than deciding what the thing should be. Just get me the report, just get the data. Can you make a report that shows this or that? This is a feeling that I've felt many, many times. And I think sometimes it creates a bit of anger or frustration because you understand the data better than others, and you hear someone else saying it, and you're like, well, that's not what I saw. I saw something different. But then also, it's probably because you've fallen into a trap, being too close to the data and not quite understanding what the story is that needs to be told to others in the business, or even others on your own team. I think at that point, data stops being insight and starts becoming opinion. And I think that drift in the meaning of what the data is showing, I think that tends to happen between different teams as they have different stories to tell. I think this translation gap between teams, it will happen often where you have one data point and you can end up with different stories depending on how it's interpreted from each one. So let's say, for example, your company's invested heavily in a new campaign and it's not quite working as you expected it to. Marketing, under their lens, they're going to look at the data and they might think, performance has dipped, we've got a problem with our messaging, or maybe we've got a problem with some of our distribution channels. Sales will often see it under the lens of pipeline. What does this mean for our next quarter or next year? And finance might look at it from more of an efficiency point of view, more forecasting for the year ahead. ROI fell off. What's important with this is that we're adding AI to all of this, and it makes everything louder between teams. Everyone in each of these departments will go off and take their own data point and draw up their own conclusions as well. And I think that can give us the illusion of clarity, because I think AI amplifies everything, including the noise. If the engagement dropped after the demo and every team hears it differently, we could take that one not that relevant context-light line about engagement dropping post-demo and turn it into something that's really not. But the problem with artificial intelligence tools is that they summarize things beautifully, particularly for people that waffle like me, and particularly for those who sometimes are a bit scared or don't quite know how to articulate it to other teams. The really big problem with this is that when something sounds good, we just stop questioning it. And I think at that point, opinion starts to take over from insight, and evidence turns into arguments. So I think what's needed is a habit for truth, which is what I'm going to be covering later on in the next few slides. So you don't really have to worry about taking any notes, because I've got a QR code with a prompt that will give you this framework that you can either use it directly as it is, or you can edit it to make it your own. So we need to build a habit for truth, because AI will give us speed, but only clarity builds trust. And meaning can fall off the back of speed. I need that data now. How long is it going to take? Can't you just put it through ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini? Do it now. But we need the habit that keeps the speed honest, that keeps it grounded, so you don't end up being close to the data and being like, that's not what we saw. That's not what we saw in the campaign. It's not a case of engagement just dropping after the demo. So this framework that is called the AI Alibi Framework. And I called it the word alibi for two reasons. One of them is to get you out of trouble when you need it. And another reason is because I found out that the word alibi originally meant elsewhere. And I feel like often the way that data travels and meaning drifts, what I wanted was something that was going to keep that original honest meaning, and it was going to travel with it, even when you're elsewhere and not there to deliver it. So here's the framework. Spot the signal. What is the data really saying? What is hiding in the noise? I think a good tip for this is that if you were to strip out all the anomalies and the story's still the same, then the anomalies are the story. But I think this is a case of interrogating your data, testing it, going through how a cynic would look at it, looking at the outliers, not just taking it for verbatim, and filling your prompts with context about it. Step 2, translate for trust. How would those other stakeholders hear this? What do they care about? What biases may they have? So do you remember that slide we looked at before with sales, marketing, and finance? We need to put ourselves in their shoes to see how we can make a story that can stick for them. Number 3, own the narrative. What's a line that they can all get behind and repeat when they have their next meeting on Monday morning? So really what this is it's not just a checklist, it's a habit. Spot the signal, so interrogating data, translating it to keep it relevant for other teams, and owning the narrative, so it's a story that everyone can get behind and isn't just the agenda of one particular team. Before this, a couple of weeks ago, I had to give a campaign update, and I thought, it's great. I'm going to put in 2 different types of prompts, and I'm going to use it as a comparison for this session that I'm doing right now. So I did one prompt where I would just put it in fairly normal. So what we'll do is we'll go through this example. And of course, this isn't a live demo because I don't want to show any bias towards one particular AI tool. And also, like live demos don't really work very well during live events. But these are the answers that I copied and pasted in. So I put in a default prompt, just like fairly kind of generic prompt where I said, to analyze campaign performance data and summarize any engagement drops. And we ended up with engagement decreased 24% after demo stage. And it came up with a recommendation. Well, every AI tool always wants to push things forward, take you on to that next step. So their next step was recommending re-engagement emails. Now, if we move over to the framework, the version that I've got, which you can scan at the end to get your own one, we end up with the Alibi clarified version, which was analyze campaign performance data, summarize key patterns or anomalies, and flag anything that looks shaky or is missing, and then end with one question that the skeptic might ask. We ended up with this. Engagement dripped after demo stage, but 2 buying team champions left mid-funnel. Possible bias could be attributing that drop to content rather than personnel change. So what we've got on one side, the default version, it's not incorrect, but it's quite misleading by its omission. There's a glaring thing there, which was that 2 champions left mid-funnel. So the skeptic would also ask the question, is this a people problem rather than a performance one? So is this to do with some of our buying champions leaving during the sales process rather than the channels just being bad in the marketing campaign? Translate for trust. So again, let's go through the second step with the same example. Default version. Summarize this finding for the company update. So we're going to share an update with other departments. And we've got here, engagement fell after the demo stage, likely due to message fatigue. Refresh those nurture emails. It's obsessed with nurture emails every time. Okay, the clarified version from the AI Alibi Framework. Reframe this finding for finance, sales, and marketing. For each of them, highlight how they'll interpret it and where phrasing could backfire, and then finish with one watch out for, like any kind of miscommunication that could occur. Finance sees an efficiency drip because the conversion costs rose, so the ROI is suffering. Sales sees lost relationships, so because key contacts left. And marketing sees the messaging drift. The content no longer matches what the decision makers expect. So we should watch out for overemphasizing the drop, and because also after the demo stage, that's not really fair on sales, and they could get quite defensive on that, and rightly so. So instead, we should phrase it as stakeholder turnover. They left mid-funnel. It's just unlucky. It happens a lot of the time. There we go. Okay, so own the narrative. How can we distill this into a message that every team can get behind that isn't going to trigger one department or make another team feel overlooked? So default version, we have write one summary line about campaign performance. We end up with that same one. Engagement fell 24% after demo, suggesting the need for new messaging. Clarified version, craft one sentence a stakeholder could repeat next week. Make it true, memorable, and action-oriented. Rank it for clarity, memorability, action, and risk of misinterpretation. Give us a scale of 0 to 5 for each of these. So our core line then goes from being engagement fell after demo, suggesting the need for new messaging, then becomes pipeline strength equals stakeholder continuity. Now, that's a completely different narrative to what we had before, and it's actually one that every team in the whole company can get behind, at least every commercial team. Much unlike the first one, which is much more marketing related. We then score it 1 to 5 on each of those. So we get 5 for clarity, 5 for memorability, 4 for accountability, and 1 for risk. We then run the whole thing again and be like, okay, what do we have to do to get these up to the level of 5? Then we ask it again to do it on a scale of 0 to 100, get the scores, and then keep pushing it to get it high to 100 and get that risk score as low as we can. The rationale here is that it connects performance to people, not just metrics. So let's look at this again and look at a before and after story check. So the default version again. Summarize key campaign results for the executive deck. Engagement fell after demos. A new content strategy is required. It's funny, it's moved on from just talking about those nurture emails, which is good. Summarize the results after running them through the full AI Alibi. Include the context spotted in step 1, the stakeholder perspectives from step 2, and the agreed one-liner from step 3. So we have here, engagement appeared to fall after demos because 2 champions left mid-funnel. Finance saw an efficiency shift, sales saw a relationship gap, and marketing saw a message drift. All are valid, but they are now aligned under one shared line. Pipeline strength equals stakeholder continuity. Again, 2 very different stories, and one is much more inclusive than the other. So let's go through this again. It's just these 3 steps every time. Spot the signal, summarize the data, flag what's shaky or incomplete or inconsistent, and ask the question that the skeptics would ask when they're looking at your data. What is the noise hiding? What's the story the data is actually telling? Translate it for trust. Reframe the insights for each role. Predict misreads and find a shared language. Put yourself in the shoes of your CFO. What question would they ask? How would they wonder how this is going to affect them? What do they care about? So it's really a case of tailoring it for every lens who's going to look at this. And 3, own the narrative. Craft one repeatable line, stress test it for clarity again and again and again, and mitigate it for risk. And then anchor the story behind a line that everyone will repeat next week. So just before I move on to the next bit, and we're coming to the end now, it's just 3 very simple steps that I wanted to focus on. And I've put 2 versions of this prompt in the QR code. So one of them you can use when you just need that alibi to get you out of trouble, and you can just copy and paste it into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever tool you're using, and it will give you that tailored, accurate story, because clarity does beat speed, and it will be a story that can travel even if you're not there to tell it. Also within that, if you scroll a bit further down on the page, you'll also find the longer version where you can tweak it more. You can template it, you can customize it, make it your own, so you can tell it what different properties mean, who's going to be looking at it exactly as well. Also through that same Linktree code, you can also, I think it's got a link to my LinkedIn page if you want to chat on there. And it's also got a link to Adverity's website if you're collecting data at scale and you want to do all these things at much, much faster rate and solve various data quality issues. Despite me saying that I waffle a lot, I'm actually burning through this at an electric pace. So at the risk of filibustering at the moment, got about 8 or 9 minutes left. Happy to take any questions if anybody would do that, but also happy to let everyone get to another session early. Does anyone have any questions for me? Hi.
If you compare the data sources that you put versus the LLMs, do you find that you get differing results? So your Excels versus your unstructured Claude, Gemini comparisons, or is your Alibi prompt solid enough that it's consistent?
I find that I do get different results in that maybe this is just me, but I find that so ChatGPT, for me, it tends to kind of want to get my requests out the way so it can get onto others, and it's a lot more positive. Whereas I find with Gemini, it tends to, for me, show me the working outs a bit more, and it doesn't quite give me the answer that I want. And I find Claude somewhere in the middle, but that's just me. But I found that the main thing that's actually helped me get more consistent results across all of them is that I will also create a data dictionary as well, so telling them what each data property means at my particular organization, and I found that that's improved things vastly and actually created much more similar results regardless of which tool I'm using. But often what I'll actually do is I'll do it in one tool, and then I will do some deep research in the other tool to then stress test the whole thing and just get a separate perspective. But I'll normally kind of limit it to just 2 rather than 3 or more. Okay.